Welcome to another edition of College Basketball Net Profit Pub Sports Radio, Tuesday, December the 6th. Ian Cameron and Connor Mack ready to break it down on a Tuesday. Lots of college basketball action taking place today compared to yesterday. I will say this, though, about yesterday. Very small slate, but very profitable slate. It was a really nice Tuesday card, or Monday card, rather, yesterday. We got Troy plus the points. I know Connor Mack liked Kent State plus the points, wire to wire against Gonzaga. My best bet on the show was the over in the game between UMass and Albany. So it ended up being a really nice Monday, and we made a pretty good account of ourselves for what was such a very limited college basketball slate yesterday. So now we've got a bigger slate to work with, and we will see if we can duplicate the profitable results that we saw from yesterday. Let's get right into it. We've got, of course, our marquee games as usual, and we'll start with Oakland taking on Syracuse. This is at the what was used to be the Carrier Dome. Now it's sponsored by somebody, and they're calling it something else. Syracuse, 17-point home favorites here, 144.5, 145 the total. I think we're going to see points in this basketball game. The Syracuse 2-3 zone that they're actually not even playing exclusively this year. Jim Boeheim's been opting to do a little bit more and, put in some man-to-man defense from time to time as well. Try to be a little bit multiple in terms of the defense. But either way, it's been a Syracuse team that's been up and down at that end of the court. Oakland's pretty solid offensively, but as we know and what we've seen all season long is they are not a very good basketball team defensively. So it should lead to, pretty good games, I would say, from the backcourt. Joe Girard could have a nice night shooting the ball, and he's been up one night, down the next. But this looks like a favorable matchup for him. I see both teams getting their points, and I would look toward over here with Oakland and Syracuse. I actually lean to Oakland a bit, plus the points, but defense, it's a lot of points. Syracuse hasn't been great in this bigger favorite range, but for a team that's lacking defense, I worry that Syracuse could end up, getting the double-digit lead, maybe extending it late, winning by 20 or so, but I'd certainly take the points before laying them in this spot. Connor, what do you think here, Oakland, Syracuse?
Yeah, I don't want Syracuse. That's for sure. Not laying this number. Not right now. You mentioned it. They just haven't got it done against teams. And I don't think they're very good. But the flip side, it's not that I'm running for Oakland either. I lean them though. I think they can hang around. They just don't stop anything. They're just horrible. And at times when they're shooting it well and they'll score. And so that's what will help them in this game and maybe help you like the over. There'll be points. But if they struggle to score, then it could get that ugly type game where they could only be in the 60s. And Syracuse maybe runs away with it and wins by 20. So lean Oakland, but I'm off here.
All right. Next up, as we continue along here, we've got all right, good stuff. Indeed, we've got, as we continue along, we've got, I'm hearing my voice in my background. That's what's throwing me. Like the YouTube clip's going. There we go. I'm like, why do I hear myself talking? There we go. So now I can focus. Yale and Butler. Next up, we've got Butler 6.5, 7-point favorites, 133.5 being the total in this game. How about this Yale Bulldogs team? 8-1 this year to start the season, 6-1 against the spread in lined games. Although they are coming off a rather shocking loss, or actually there was a win, but they didn't cover. 77-72 against Stony Brook, struggled to pull away and win by margin. It was the first time this year they haven't covered a point spread, Yale, but they've been impressive. I mean, you look at what they've done. They played a pretty tough game against Colorado on the road, lost by 3, 65-62, that being their only straight-up loss of the season. They probably haven't played, like Colorado's probably the next best team they've played after Butler. Butler is a pretty solid defensive team. There have been a couple games that they've been hurt a little bit at the defensive end, the games against Tennessee and NC State, which ended up being their 2 losses. They bounced back to beat Kansas State and then Tennessee Tech in their last 2 games. Butler does have very, very solid defensive numbers overall this season. Offensively, under Thad Matta, they've actually done a little bit better job at that end of the floor as well. 21st in the country shooting the basketball field goal percentage, which is pretty impressive. Yale's been excellent defensively, but at the same time, they've also played, a lighter schedule really outside of that game against Colorado. Baylor, you look at them in this favorites role, though, it's still a little bit hit or miss, a little bit dicey as far as I'm concerned. They did beat up on this floor here earlier in the season, the likes of New Orleans and St. Francis, PA, and the Citadel. They were larger favorites and they covered in those games. But when all things are considered equal here, we did see Yale in Boulder hang tough, lose by 3. Kind of has me leaning toward Yale a little bit here, getting 6.5 and 7 points. Butler, to me, in terms of a team winning by margin on a consistent basis, not someone I trust. Yale's been very efficient offensively. Step up in class defensively on the road, make no mistake about it. But they've been very efficient offensively. Butler, there's still some doubt about whether they can put the biscuit in the basket enough to cover a number like this against a Yale team that's played pretty well, and factor in that Butler's going to want to slow this down. So you're not going to see a ton of possessions, which means Butler better be good defensively, and they better make their shots if they're going to cover a number of this magnitude. I'm not so sure. I have a small bet on Yale plus the points here. Connor, how about you? Yale, Butler?
Yeah, I wish this maybe was a few more. I want to see this Butler team a little bit more. I think they're going to start turning it around with Badmata there and playing a little bit better. Defensively, they've been good against the 3. Yale shot it crazy from 3, almost 40%. And you mentioned their offense been very efficient. Butler on this other side shot it all right. 49, 7, 22nd in the country. That's kind of been hit or miss, I guess, in games. They've had some real big games and some not so much. I can't get there. I've been impressed with Yale. I just don't think, and I think this Colorado team's a little bit down. So I don't know how high I hold that game, even though it always is tough to go there. So, yeah, I wish I could get there with Yale, and I lean under. I would only take the under here.
Yeah, I think so. I think this game actually, you're right, could stay under the total here with Yale and Butler. I lean that way from a total standpoint as well. All right, we got Illinois and Texas. This is the first of a doubleheader tonight at Madison Square Garden. 2 really good games there in the world's most famous arena, starting with Illinois and Texas. Texas 3.5-point favorites, 142 being the total in this game. Total's gone up a bit. I could see it. I don't love the total, but I can see why people are interested in the over. I think it's a close game. I've been pretty good with my reads on Illinois this year. Neutral court environment. I thought getting 4 here was a little bit rich to be laying that with Texas. I think I got it at +4. It's down to 3.5. I still lean Illinois here plus the points. I like the idea of taking this team in the underdog role, something I've already done this year against UCLA. I think the key is going to be can Illinois, be able to handle what Texas is going to throw at them in terms of ball pressure. They're very good in that regard under Chris Beard and that pressure style defense that they've got. But I think this is where a Terrence Shannon Jr. comes into handy for you. You got this guy to be a ball handler, someone that's going to be an experienced player to go up against that style of defense. And I think he's going to be someone that's maybe a little bit capable of handling that. Texas on the other side, when you see the way they are playing, very impressive. A win against Creighton, win against Gonzaga so far this season. Both of those, though, were on their home court. On the neutral court, it's been a little bit more dicey for them so far this season. We'll see if they're ready now for this game against this Illinois team. Illinois is coming off the loss against Maryland, 71-66. Not all that surprising. The Big Ten conference games, remember last year how dominant home court was and home teams were in Big Ten conference games. It feels like that's just one conference where if you're playing even a decent to good team on the road, you're going to have a tough time winning because the home court's been so good in that conference, and Illinois kind of ran into that at Maryland in their last game. And Maryland's a good basketball team. I don't think we punish Illinois for losing that game. Maryland's played well so far this year. I think it's a tight game. It wouldn't surprise me to see this as a one-possession game. I thought at 4, I certainly liked Illinois. I still like it at 3.5. If it gets any lower, maybe I get a little cautious, but I got Illinois plus the points in this one. What do you think, Connor?
Yeah, this is tough. I just think you start reaching to 4. I know it's basically 3.5. A lot of places that might just be too much, but Texas, I think, has the better defense. But I don't know if that means 3-4 here on this neutral court, maybe a little bit. Illinois, I think both teams are great with turnovers. They're going to force turnovers all night long. Texas, though, one reason why I don't love laying this on the neutral floor with them a little bit is they're not a great shooting team. And that could just hurt you when you're laying a number and they got to cover. Whether it comes down to free throws, they haven't been good from behind the arc. Carr's got to be huge. I mean, he's their point guard and obviously needs to come up big. I kind of lean Illinois. I like the under. I know these teams scored some points, but neutral floor, this high a total. I know it went up, and now we're seeing some buyback come back down. If I could get 143, I'm going to be on the under, I think, here.
All right, we've got a good one here in the mid-major ranks. St. Louis taking on Iona in this one. We've got St. Louis 1.5-point road favorites, 151.5 the total in this game. These two teams actually played each other last year in January, and St. Louis got a 1-point win, 68-67 in that game. I honestly think St. Louis is probably even better this year. I really like this Billiken squad and what they're capable of. They've got inside-outside balance with Gibson Jimerson, Yuri Collins, Javon Pickett. Of course, Javonte Perkins is a guy that's been really marred by injuries throughout his career here with the Billikens. Man, if he can stay healthy, this is a big-time impactful player to the Billikens, and it looks like he finally is. So I like the Billikens quite a bit. You look at the Iona schedule that they've played so far. I'm honestly not impressed, especially when you look at who the two toughest games you could say. When they beat up Vermont, I guess that's a pretty good win, but Vermont's not played like we thought they would to begin the year. They lost by 5 at Hofstra. They lose to Santa Clara, 86-76. Iona in their toughest games, they haven't exactly totally impressed me. I know St. Louis has had some stumbles. The Maryland game, they got blown out. And they lost to Auburn, although they're very competitive in defeat against Auburn. I thought they put up a really good battle against a pretty good Auburn Tigers team the way they've started the season. I know revenge is on Iona's mind here after losing last year, but I just think St. Louis is the better of these two teams. They're an experienced team. They're capable of going on the road and winning games. I think they can get this one here, and I think they'll beat Iona again. So I like the Billikens here, lean over the total as well. Conor, St. Louis, Iona.
Yeah, St. Louis can hit their free throws, which they do. That Auburn game, they went 1 for 11, I think, down the stretch. It was just not like them at all.
You got to look at that as an anomaly because they're 77%
Yeah.
free throw shooting team, 27th in the country.
Yeah, definitely. It was weird. Both these teams can score it. Even at 150, I think we can get over here. I lean over in this game. I lean St. Louis a little bit in the over. I don't trust Iona's defense. And I think both teams, from everything I've gone through, their defense is not very good. There's going to be open shots. As long as they hit them, I think this creeps over the total here.
All right, next up, we've got the Battle of Georgia here. Georgia and Georgia Tech. We've got Georgia Tech here up to 4.5-point home favorites in this one. I agree with the move to Georgia Tech. I haven't backed Georgia Tech a lot, but I think they could get this game here against their in-state rival here, Georgia. Georgia to me is still a team I've got doubts about. They are 7-2. You actually look at their record; it looks very impressive, but not when you then look at who they've played. I mean, it's been basically one week cupcake win after another. East Tennessee State, Hampton, Florida A&M. I mean, it's been a sisters of the poor type of run here for Georgia in terms of racking up all these W's. I mean, the two step-up games, they lost both of them. UAB blown out, Wake Forest lose by 10, and they were down by 20 at halftime. I thought Wake took it easy on them in the second half of that game. So 7-2, but not facing any sort of tough schedule. Haven't beaten anybody good. Failed miserably in their two step-up-in-class opponents, Wake Forest and UAB. Now they're playing, and I'm not saying they're on the UAB level, Georgia Tech, but I think they're comparable with Wake. I think Wake may be a little bit better than Georgia Tech, but Georgia Tech on the other side, yeah, they're only 5-3 so far this year, but they've played Iowa, they've played Marquette, they've played Utah. Georgia State's a pretty good mid-major team. I think this Georgia Tech team has just faced a tougher schedule, a little bit more battle-tested. The one thing I know about Georgia and a lot of the issues we saw with Mike White and his Florida teams before he got the Georgia job is not exactly offensively creative, and he's bringing that lack of creativity and lack of fluidity offensively with him to Georgia. They're only shooting 41% as a team. They're not shooting the three ball very well. Georgia Tech is defending at a pretty solid level early in the season, and I think that's going to be the difference when it's all said and done. Georgia Tech's not a great offensive team by any stretch of the imagination, but they're still a better offensive team than Georgia. They probably have the edge at the other end of the court on defense, too. They played a tougher schedule, way tougher so far than Georgia. I think they get the win and win by enough of a margin here as short home favorites to cash a ticket. What do you think here, Connor?
Yeah, I'm not going to mess with the side here. Both these teams have been pretty much money to the under. Don't shoot it well, pretty slow. Think
Yep.
they play decent defense, and especially this, kind of rivalry game, Georgia Tech. I like the under here, 131. I think the game stays in the 60s.
All right, we've got the Philadelphia battle next up. St. Joe's and Temple. Always good when we get one of these Philly rivalry situations. We've got Temple here, double-digit home favorites, 142.5 being the total in this one. Temple's been an odd team this year, 5-4 straight up, 5-4 against the spread. I mean, their results have been all over the place. They had a nice win against Rutgers. They lose to St. John's. They lose to Vanderbilt. They beat Villanova the first game of the year. They get drubbed by Richmond. They beat VCU. Very impressive win. Their last game, they've been Jekyll one day, Hyde the next. I mean, that's the best way to describe Aaron McKee and his Temple team so far. All over the map they've been with their results to this point. St. Joe's, they check in at 3-4 straight up this year. Their wins coming in overtime against the Penn Quakers. They beat Lafayette 63-59, but failed to cover as sizable home favorites there. And then they beat up Albany 99-79. And as we're seeing with Albany, they're not a good basketball team at all right now. Saw UMass just lay waste to them last night. But it is a lot of points. It's a rivalry game. It's Temple that I don't trust one game to the next. You could make a case for St. Joe's here, plus the points. I do lean in that direction. Is it something that I'm overly confident with? No, because I do think Temple's the better team. And Temple defensively here in this game could be able to squeeze the life out of this St. Joe's offense, which has not been nearly as productive or prolific as it's been in the past. We'll have to wait and see. They're only shooting 41% as a team so far this year. And the St. Joe's team at the defensive end of the basketball court continues to have their share of issues as well. And the other concern with taking the points would be Temple with a terrific free throw shooting percentage, one of the best in the country, 78.6% from the charity stripe. And St. Joe's just 67.8% from the free throw line. So a big free throw percentage disparity, big advantage there for Temple. That being said, rivalry game, kind of lean to St. Joe's, but do I love it? Not particularly. Connor, how about you? St. Joe's Town.
Yeah, I don't love this game at all. Really, I'll be short here. I can't back St. Joe's. I mean, I'd like to. I haven't seen anything in any of their games that makes me want to take them. I got to see more basketball from them. On the flip side, I've seen plenty of Temple, but now laying doubles, I just don't want to do it. I think they're the better team. Think they win here, but I'd just be cautious to land this number.
All right. Next up, as we continue along, we've got James Madison, the Dukes, and Virginia. James Madison, one of the most interesting, intriguing teams to watch, really, in the early season out of the non-power conference teams. Virginia laying doubles here, as you would expect, 134.5 the total in this one. We've got ourselves what you would call a classic, not Star Wars, Pace Wars here in this game. No question about that. That's what should make this matchup stylistically very entertaining to watch, to see how it plays out. We know Virginia, the pack line defense under Tony Bennett, cut off the offense around the rim, force teams to make three-point shots against you. That's the way Virginia is going to play, slow it down. It's amazing. They've always been slow. I think they're even slower this year. 361 they are in tempo out of 363. 363 Division I college basketball teams. They're 361 in terms of tempo here. They really have that ability to slow it down. 34th in the country defensive efficiency. They're going to need that against a very, very high-scoring James Madison team. It's so fun to watch them offensively, but can they execute? If Virginia gets their pace and doesn't turn the ball over, forcing James Madison to execute their offense in the half court, can they make shots against that, tough as nails Virginia half-court defense in the pack line? That's going to be the question mark, because Virginia, when you look at their results so far this year, they're going to force teams to out of the paint, clog up the paint, force them out of the paint, and force them to make threes. The good news for James Madison is they've been phenomenal as a perimeter shooting team so far this year. 42.2% from three-point range, and Virginia's given up a few threes this year. They're giving up 35% from three-point range. Virginia 265 in the country. So there is that pathway where if James Madison's three-point shots are falling, they're going to be able to hang around potentially in this game. But at the same point in time, you also look at the schedule that James Madison's played: Eastern Kentucky, Valpo. They played South Dakota State on a neutral court, and were impressive in that game. But there's only one team you could say that's in the ballpark of a Virginia that they've played so far, and it's North Carolina. And it's a North Carolina team that hasn't even played this year so far anywhere close to as good as they did last year when they made that run all the way to the Final Four. And North Carolina just whipped James Madison in that game, 80-64 final score. And the James Madison offense, the shots weren't falling against North Carolina, who don't possess the defense Virginia does. So this is a fascinating game. I don't really have a strong feel for it. Over, under, it could go either way, side or total. Or James Madison plus the points, or laying them with Virginia could go either way. But after what I saw against North Carolina from JMU, I'm pumping the brakes on taking them tonight, because, you're getting less points with them here, and Virginia's a better defensive team than North Carolina, and they struggled to execute offensively against North Carolina. Like 64 points is all they got in that game. So it's going to probably be a pass all around. I'll lean a little to James Madison. I'll lean a little bit to the over, but nothing super strong. What do you think here, Connor?
Yeah, I mean, you hit it. This is what I was going to talk about, was JMU. If they can hit these shots, it's for a team to be at 42% from threes. Pretty impressive. So if that continues, they could hang around. But I think the difference here is the talent. I think Virginia's too good. I mean, I would go the other way. I'm not playing this, but I would lay it with Virginia here. And I'm big on James Madison. But if the shots go, that's just the main thing. Jump shooting team that scores a ton. Can they get this done? We'll see. Maybe.
Yeah, we will see indeed. I mean, because the thing that stuck out to me was that they're making threes, and Virginia's given up the 3-point shot more than they've accustomed to. So, again, if those shots are falling for James Madison, maybe they will have the potential to. That's why I lean that direction. But I also saw that North Carolina game, and I really liked James Madison in that game, and North Carolina, which has been mediocre all season so far, was still too much for them. So that would be the hesitation that I have. All right, next up, we've got a pretty good one here, mid-major wise. Toledo and Northern Iowa. Toledo 4.5-point road favorites, 154. They're heading to Cedar Falls for this game in Northern Iowa. Northern Iowa getting points, especially, home underdog, always kind of appealing. 3-0 straight up at home this year, but I don't know if they've faced anyone quite like Toledo on the home court. In fact, I know they haven't, because they played Evansville, Northern Illinois, and then something by the name of Wartburg in their 3 home games this year. So, yeah, Wartburg 105-49. They beat Wartburg, a college that I'm sure many of us haven't even heard of until I just said it a moment ago. But yeah, so again, they're tough at home. They're usually good catching points, but I don't know. This is a short number on a pretty damn good Toledo team, a Toledo Rockets team that, offensively, they might be able to have some advantages here in this game. You look at the Northern Iowa team, has not been as good 3-point defense, and Toledo can absolutely stroke it from beyond the arc, something that you'd have to concern yourself with a little bit here if you are Northern Iowa going into this game. Another thing, too, for Northern Iowa, is their offense in particular has been pretty decent in terms of 3-point percentage, 36.4%. And then on the Toledo side of the equation, they've actually struggled in terms of their perimeter defense. And they've, struggled to get consistent stops in a lot of games this year. 90, 83, 86, given up against Oakland, Kansas City, East Carolina. They did have a good defensive game at home against Richmond, a pretty good home court. That's really where they brought it defensively. But you get them on these neutral court situations and on the road, and all of a sudden that defense kind of disappears for the Toledo Rockets. They gave up 80, 28-55 shooting, and an 80-73 loss to George Mason in their last game. In fact, you look at the overall defensive numbers for Toledo: 45.9% shooting allowed, 39.2 from 3-point range, 78.8 points per game. You put it to the road numbers, and the numbers get worse: 80 points per game, 50% field goal percentage allowed. And the 3-point shooting goes from 39.2 3-point defense overall to 43.8% allowed from 3 on the road for Toledo. So again, when Toledo goes on the road, the defense kind of disappears a little bit. So I think the game can actually end up going up and over the total. We know Toledo is going to push pace. We know offensively they are extremely efficient. Northern Iowa, is not quite the snail pace team they once were. They're moderate in terms of their tempo ratings. Their offense looks a little bit better this year so far. Their defense looks actually slightly worse this year. So I think that the game actually might be able, even with this high number in the 150s, might be able to still see it go up and over the total. What do you think here, Connor Mack? Toledo, Northern Iowa.
This seems cheap with Toledo, but this Northern Iowa team is always good at home. They just, yeah, but I don't know how great this team is, with them this year. They've dealt with some, a few injuries, some stuff like that, but it's always been tough to play. So that's why, in the end, I'm going to stay off. There should be points. Even at this high a total, I think it can get over. I mean, I could consistently see it. Toledo 7 straight, 8 out of their last 9 on the road have gone over. Even here in the 150, it's right here. It gets over. I think they get in the 80s. Northern Iowa gets there too, I think, at least in the 70s. So I think it still goes over. Maybe look at Toledo team total over. They should just get there maybe.
Yeah, I think if you're a Toledo Rockets fan, you better enjoy this head coach, Todd Kowalczyk, while he's still there. I think he might end up getting
he'll be
an
gone.
offer. Yeah, he's going to get an offer, I think, from one of these bigger schools. He's done a nice job here with the Rockets here the last couple of years. So, as you know, you don't usually hang on to coaches for very long when they're successful at this mid-major level. All right, Big Ten action. Maryland, Wisconsin. We've got Wisconsin 1.5-point home favorites here in this one. The total currently around that 130, 1.5 range in this one. I like Maryland here, believe it or not. And I'm going against, I worry a little because, as I just mentioned earlier, the Big Ten home courts are really good. And last year, teams on their home court seemed to win and cover at a very high percentage. I'm kind of going against that here. But look, I've had my success fading Wisconsin a few times. We just saw Wake Forest go into there. Kohl Center there in the Big Ten ACC Challenge and beat Wisconsin. So, how daunting is this home court when it's all said and done? I mean, Wake just beat them there. They didn't cover against Green Bay early in the season. They were laying a huge number. They only won by 11. They do have some impressive wins against Dayton, USC, Marquette in their last game was very impressive. They kind of caught Marquette, though, after the huge blowout over Baylor. But I think in this spot here, Maryland has really impressed me, and they don't have too many road tests so far on their schedule. Their only true road game was Louisville, but they didn't just beat Louisville. They hammered them 79-54. Now, granted, Louisville stinks. Louisville's terrible. It's the only true road game, but they didn't mess around. They went in there and they put the boots to Louisville right from the beginning. I love the hire of Kevin Willard. I've been a fan of him ever since he was with Seton Hall. The job he did there was terrific. He's come here to Maryland, and you look at the talent they've got with Dante Scott, with Jameer Young, Hakeem Hart. This is Julian Reese. This is a talented group, that's played better defense too. That's the one thing. Turgeon could never get this team consistently at the defensive end playing well, but they've been playing well much of the season. How about the way they held St. Louis down to 67 points, 21 of 58 shooting? The way they held down a very good Illinois team to a 66-point effort, 71-66 against Illinois in their Big Ten opener last week. I get it. The home courts are tough to fade in this conference, but I'm going to make an exception here because I just think flat out Maryland's a little bit better team than Wisconsin right now, and I'm getting 1.5, 2 points. So it's one of those rare instances where I'm going against the grain, against the flow. I know there's millions of these college basketball bettors that love these spots, the short home favorite, going up against a very good team, and a lot of times they look for the home favorite to come through. I'm bucking that trend in this game. I like the Terps. What do you think here, Connor?
Both these teams are good. We'll up through it. But real quick on your thing, the last few times, the road team has won here and covered the last couple of years, the last 3 or 4 times. I remember last year for sure. Wisconsin's played a tough schedule. So's Maryland. I don't know, as tough. I think Maryland is a little bit better, but I'm on the flip side here. I just think Wisconsin at home with the short number, just a bucket, take a money line. And I'm not really impressed with Wisconsin, but it just seems like one of these bogged down type games, and they get it done. Probably in a close one, So I think you're not really laying anything here, just the point. So I think it's tight though. no matter what. And I lean under and just lean to them here.
All right, so Wisconsin for Conor Mack and Maryland for me, which means a guaranteed winner is coming your way from that game right here on the college basketball net profit show. All right, next up we've got Iowa Duke. It's the second game of the doubleheader at Madison Square Garden tonight. We've got Duke 2.5-point favorites here, 148 the total in this game. The money's come in on Duke, but if there was one time I was going to take Iowa, it would be tonight. You know, I always think this team is better in the dog role than the favorites role, and it's kind of played out that way so far this season. Although they did win and cover against Georgia Tech, 81-65 in their last game, but 6.5-point favorites against TCU. They lost that game outright on the neutral. 8.5-point favorites at Clemson. They only won by 3. You know, they've had their moments where, you know, in the favorites role, they've come up short, especially in their bet tougher games. And then when they've been in the underdog role against good competition, like the Seton Hall game, where they won 83-67, that's where you want Iowa here. And say what you will about Iowa defensively, we're still always totally unsure of whether they're going to be good one game to the next at that end of the floor. But one thing you can't deny is their ability offensively, led, of course, by Chris Murray. He had 31 points, 20. How about 31 points and 20 rebounds? How about that for a stat line for him in the win against Georgia Tech? He was absolutely outstanding in that game. He's averaging 21 points per game this year. Just the straw that stirs the drink, if you will, for this Iowa Hawkeyes team that, again, every year, I'm not a big Fran McCaffrey fan. If you've heard me on shows, college basketball shows over the year, you know that. But when you've got just a bona fide go-to scorer like Chris Murray, you get 3 others in double figures as well: Philip Rebraca, Tony Perkins, and the son of the coach, Patrick McCaffrey, as well for this Iowa team. But we know able to score points. There's no question about that. And to be quite honest with you, you talk about teams that have been somewhat disappointing me early in the season. I don't want to say Duke's been that, but they've been a little up and down. They've been a little suspect. They did beat Ohio State at home. They did beat Xavier on a neutral court, but they struggled to beat Oregon State also on the neutral court. They had the loss against Kansas in the early part of the season. And, of course, they get blown out by the Purdue Boilermakers as well. So I think when you look at this game, neutral court, Duke does play at Madison Square Garden. They've played here many times, not so much this collection of Duke players, but the program in general seems that they play a lot in these non-conference neutral court settings at Madison Square Garden. So maybe a little bit more of an advantage there in terms of the location to Duke, but I still like Iowa here, especially now with the number bumped up a little bit to +2.5. What do you think here, Connor? Iowa Duke.
I don't know if I want to bet this game. I kind of lean Duke, and I'll bet them often with this short number. They're shooting all right from the free throw line. I've seen a couple games where they've shot it better, but still they're shooting. I thought their defense has been pretty good at times for Duke. But and we know Iowa, whatever schedule they play, they're top 30 right now, their defense. But I think this one should be a good one. Just tough for me. Like I said, I think if Duke, the shots roll, they've had to, younger kids have had to play here for Duke with some of the injuries that they had of all this top class that they had. So just a tough one here on the at MSG for I lean Duke a little bit here.
All right, lean.
I wonder if there'll be points. I don't know. This could stay under. I mean, it could go over. Too much of a coin flip for me.
Yeah, I just find that it's a two-man show for Duke. Not that it isn't for Iowa. I mean, so much relies on Chris Murray, but for Duke, it's Filipowski and Roach for the most part. Those are the two. You got the inside-outside combo, the big center, Filipowski, a good guard in Jeremy Roach. But there's been up and down performances from the supporting cast outside of those two guys. Again, if you're Iowa and you want to show the world, and that's what I keep hearing from the coach, Fran McCaffrey, we think this is one of our better defensive teams. Here's your chance to prove it, right? Go up there tonight, have a good game against Duke, and see if you can get that great defensive performance and that improved defensive team that you say you are. This is your opportunity here to prove it here in this one. So, like I say, I don't bet Iowa very much, but I'm going to go in that direction here, +2.5. All right, there you go. That's the marquee games. Anybody in the chat that has Q&A questions on games we have not talked about yet, now's the time to submit them. In the meantime, CMAC, any games that we have not talked about yet that you like and tonight on the board.
Yeah, I'll just rip through a couple. I got to go back. Sam Houston State. I got to take 10 with them. And I've been a little bit. I've liked what I've seen out of Oklahoma State. I think they can hang around with 10 in that one. Let's hit the extra board. I think Coppin State. NC State can score it, but I think Coppin can hang around. 22 is just a bit too much. I think they can hang in that number. Couple totals that I was looking at. American Mount St. Mary's. I thought this was a little low. I know American goes slow, but just at 130, I think this can get over. I was looking at a few of their games that stayed under, but I think that can just creep over the total. I lean that. I have not bet that. And lastly, one over, I like Pacific, Northern Arizona, over 147. I think we got points there. That gets over. Anything
I
there?
agree with that one. Yeah, I agree with that one. Pacific and then Northern Arizona. Actually, the Sam Houston State I like. That's on my card as well. Absolutely. I think that's definitely a good side. I like their chances of hanging tough there in that game. Bart Torvik only has Oklahoma State 6.4 point home favorite in that game. So there's definitely some value on Sam Houston State. I like that side as well. That was going to be on the list of games that I like. The ones that I like, I will run through it. My card, the games that we didn't talk about. I like the over in that ECU Wilmington game. I think it goes over 136.5. I lean to Wilmington. I mean, I'm not stepping in front of Wilmington. I mean, everybody that's betting against Wilmington is using the same logic they do to bet against TCU and bet against Providence and bet against TCU in college football, and Minnesota Vikings in the NFL, where every week we got to bet against them because they're lucky. They can't keep doing this. And there's a lot of stats that point out that Wilmington, the luck factor, shot quality, if you know of that website, that says, they're bound for regression negatively and all this shit. And all they do is they keep winning and they keep on covering. And I'm not looking to be outsmart myself and go against that. So I do like Wilmington a little bit, but I like the over as well. I like the total in that game. I like the over with Milwaukee and Chattanooga, and I lean a little to laying the points with Chattanooga as well against UW Milwaukee. I'm going to give Tarleton State a look, plus 19 against Baylor. We've talked about this team in the underdog role. This is a team that it seems like when they're dogs and they're playing, better competition, this is when you get them just hanging around in games. And it's not like Baylor. What we've seen from them so far is a team that's a finished, polished product yet. They've had their ups, they've had their downs early in the season, and they're coming off that huge win against Gonzaga. They've got a bit of a break until December 18th after this game tonight. This is the perfect spot for Tarleton State to hang tough in this game. You look at the losses, 3-point loss at Arizona State in their opener. Drake on a neutral court, lose by 7. Wichita State, lose by 12. That's what we're looking for here. We're looking for that defense, that half-court, tenacious style of play from Tarleton State. Hang in the game. They're getting a huge number. Baylor off the huge win against Gonzaga, and then they're off for like almost 2 weeks until their next game. This is not a max focus spot, in my opinion, for the big home favorite. So I like Tarleton there in that one. And a couple others. Let me see here. Sam Houston, Conor mentioned that one. I like it. Nevada Pepperdine over. I think it's one of my favorite totals on the board tonight. Nevada Pepperdine over the total. Both play with pace. Both good offensive teams. Both with a great deal of athleticism. Should be a fun game. I'm surprised actually the total was 144. I thought it could have been a little higher. I like that one.
I see a lot of big bets to the under. I just don't know. I mean, I'm not going to do it with those two teams. I still think it gets over too.
Yeah, I agree. And of course, Lorenzo Romar there at with Pepperdine. They've got a very good offensive team. They're showing their warts defensively as well, but I think that game gets over the total there, Nevada and Pepperdine. I'm on a bunch of overs on the added board. I'm on UMBC, the Retrievers, and the Columbia team out of the Ivy League over 152. It's gone up, I think, to 153 since then, but I like that. South Carolina State, Winthrop. I like the favorite there, Winthrop. Actually laying 11. I think it's South Carolina State's had a real tough season so far. I think Winthrop might be able to win that one pretty comfortably, laying the 11. And I lean over the total. Starchild asking about that total. High total, but I lean over. It's not my favorite total, but I lean over before under there. I do like Charleston and Presbyterian over the total. Charleston seems to get everybody to play a little bit more of a run and gun style, regardless of who they play. I'm on Wagner. Plus the points in their game against Fordham. Anytime I see Fordham laying the kind of number they're laying there. You got to wonder. And I don't know, with Kyle Neptune going to Villanova, I don't know if he brought Fordham up to a level that, they haven't played at in years. And I wonder if they can maintain that. I'm not so sure. So I like Wagner +9 there. And last two on the added board, couple of overs, High Point and Furman. It's a high total at 157.5, no pun intended, but I think it gets over. And I'm also on that game that Connor Mack mentioned where he likes Coppin State plus the points. I like the over in that game, Coppin State and NC State. Very high total, 160.5. No bargain by any stretch, but look, we saw NC State and Florida International, and a couple of these NC State games, they've really been high scoring, especially when they step down in class and they play these lower mid-major teams. Their games seem to just go way over the total. So that's why I thought even at 160.5, that game, Coppin and NC State goes over the total. There we go. All right, what do we got in the chat in terms of questions? Let me just see here. Yeah, we mentioned the Tarleton State game there. Let me just see here what else we've got. American. Yeah, Teese, our good guy. Hope you're doing well, Teese. Great times, of course, in San Antonio earlier this year. American. Yeah, I lean American too in that one. Both first half and full game. I wouldn't talk you out of that for sure. Jake Burns, Pepperdine -2 versus Nevada. I feel Nevada's better than Pepperdine, but Pepperdine's got some more higher level players on their roster this year than they've had in years past. So, and they're going to get up for Nevada. They know Nevada's consistently a team. There's a team that's been in the tournament back when Musselman was coaching there before Alford was there. So I think it's a circled spot on the schedule for Pepperdine to be able to host Nevada. So I would lean Nevada, honestly, because I think they're a little bit better, but I didn't like it enough to bet it. And certainly, Jake, if you like Pepperdine, I'd say if you want to stick with it, I have no vehement disagreement with that. Bill McHugh, Houston, team total over 42.5 in the first half. It's always a question of, focus for the Houston Cougars in this spot. Certainly, they're very capable, of getting that kind of number against, especially the North Florida Osprey, who are not exactly a team we think of shutting it down defensively. Not at all. I mean, they're giving up a hideous 80.9 points per game, 45% field goal percentage. I mean, just awful stuff from North Florida. And we know it's all about focus, right? Houston's coming off St. Mary's. They've got this game. They've got Alabama coming up later this week. That's pretty big game. Alabama to the SEC. I mean, it's just, is it a flat spot? Do you get that North Houston team dialed in and really ratcheting it up here in this spot? Kind of a sandwich spot. That's the only thing that I would be hesitant on, Bill, with that team total over 42.5. But matchup wise and X's and O's wise, they honestly should get to 45, if not 50 in the first half against this North Florida defense. So it's just about whether the focus is there.
Yeah, and this time of the day, the lines just moved against you, whether it's the number or the team total. I'm sure it's moved a point or two. So, yeah.
Yeah, Marquette -19. Someone asking in the chat tonight for them. What I like about Marquette here in this situation, the problem is I like Lavelle Moten and that coach of NC Central. He's been there forever. They've had a pretty decent start. The problem is, when you look at their schedule, the Radford game was probably their best result, but they've had some games where they've played, Liberty was one of their tougher games. They got blown out in that game. They've been pretty good, though, as an underdog. Let's not forget, first game of the year, Virginia, 73-61. And now you got to lay 19.5. You do get Marquette off the loss against Wisconsin, but they have Notre Dame, they have Creighton, and they have Providence coming up. So they've got a big non-conference game with Notre Dame next. And then they start Big East play with Creighton and Providence after that. So I'm off it. I mean, Marquette -19. They are off a loss, so they should have focus. But this NC Central team, man, they just find a way to just hang in there at times. And that might be enough getting that many points. We'll see.
Yeah, take the over.
There
Marquette, take the over 145.
Yeah, no question about that. What else have we got here? We've got a couple more. Wyoming from Nunya. Wyoming -11.5 at home against Texas A&M Commerce. Wyoming's been one of those teams that's been disappointing for me so far this year. 3-5. They've obviously had some issues in terms of health. I mean, Graham Ike is someone that they have really missed.
They need him.
Yeah.
After watching them, they need him back. It's
Yeah.
just they're not the same team. Even
No.
with Maldonado, they don't have enough, so they desperately need him back soon. Yeah.
They need him back. They've lost 4 in a row, albeit, I can't even say the schedule's been that tough. I mean, Santa Clara, okay, solid team, not
Yeah.
great. Boston College, I mean, losing to 11 against them's concerning. Drake, no shame in that. Grand Canyon at home as favorites, though, and you lose by 8. I mean, Grand Canyon's solid, but, you were favored in that game on your very tough home floor, and you found a way to lose that game. So I can't say I'm in love with laying this kind of number against with Wyoming right now, even at home, even against a team they have the capability of, running away from. But the one thing about A&M Commerce here is it's a pretty solid, for the most part, offensive team. And always, when you're getting that many points, that could end up being something that helps you out. We'll have to wait and see. And defensively, they've actually been a little bit better, the Commerce team, than I thought coming into the season. They were giving up 66.3 points per game so far. So it's just Wyoming not in the form I love to lay doubles with right now.
Yeah, definitely not. I want nothing to do with that team right now.
No, it's especially in that.
Hopefully, I'll see you later
game.
this month, or maybe in January when he's back. So.
Yeah, they're still missing key players. Yeah, I think that's stay away from laying points. Maybe tonight's the night, but I can't trust it, and I'm not going to trust it. What else have we? I think we've got a couple more. Jacqueline Mason, Bucknell, plus 5.5. You're right. That money, it's funny. It's been all going against Bucknell in that game. Huge money coming in on LaSalle, all the way up to 5.5 in that game. Bucknell's been a nice little point spread story here. They've covered 4 of their last 6 games. The underdog role, albeit it was Georgia, but they lost by 4 in that game. They've been solid. LaSalle on the other side coming off an overtime win against Penn. It's a LaSalle team that, they've had some good results. They've had some really rough ones as well. The Penn win was a good one, but let's not forget they got drilled by Temple, lose by 7 to Georgetown, lose by 12 against Wake Forest on a neutral court. They did cover through the back door against Villanova, but I think the key matchup here with Bucknell and LaSalle is LaSalle's a tough offensive team to trust as a favorite. And you're seeing that. They're only 336 in the country, 40% shooting. Bucknell, pretty solid defensive team. I think there's things that line up here with the Bucknell side being able to hang around. So I don't disagree LaSalle should be favored here, but now we're talking about them going from 3.5 to 5. Too much now to be laying with LaSalle in this matchup against a Bucknell team that we've seen, get inside these kind of numbers previously. So I'm with whoever mentioned that. It was Jacqueline Mason. Nunya kind of likes Bucknell as well. I wouldn't talk either of you out of that side. I lean Bucknell as well.
Yeah, I wanted to need a few more to really like Bucknell, but I lean there too.
Yep. And UMKC, the old Kangaroos, taking on Oklahoma. Yeah, the money's come in on UMKC. They're 0-3 straight up on the road. But in those road games, they played Kansas State. They covered in that one. And the first game of the year against LSU, 23-point dogs. They covered there. The only game that got away from them point spread-wise on the road was Illinois, 86-48. Oklahoma's coming off a loss against Villanova, 70-66 in their last game. I actually like what I've seen so far this year. Aside from that loss from Porter Moser's team, they beat Ole Miss. They beat up Seton Hall. A couple of nice wins for them. I have no thought on that game, UMKC Oklahoma. Again, with these teams that are caught in between these neutral court games, and then they've got their bigger, tougher opponents on deck, sometimes can be a bit of a flat spot. So from that standpoint, I can see the case for UMKC, but didn't want to go against Oklahoma off a loss, so ultimately I passed on it.
Yeah, it's just fallen. 20 now 17. You're missing the number. But if you got 20, I think they could hang. Right around there, in that 20.
Yeah, Arkansas with Greensboro. I don't think Greensboro is particularly trustworthy here, even though this could be, a little bit of a flat spot for Oklahoma. Arkansas. They play Oklahoma. Speaking of Oklahoma, Arkansas plays them in their next game. But Arkansas could roll here in this one. You look at Greensboro so far, away from home. Miami's not very good, and they lost to Miami by 14 early in the season. North Carolina A&T is 5-point favorites. They lost by 17. As well. 7.5-point favorites at Elon. They won by 4. Greensboro's definitely got some issues. And another thing they have issues with so far, too, when you look at their numbers so far, is a couple turnover issues. That doesn't play well usually against Arkansas. they're not a particularly good shooting team either. That's something that would concern you a little bit here is for the Greensboro side as well. It's a lot of points, but it would be favored or pass for me with Arkansas in that game.
Yeah, I have nothing there. I think they roll, but I'm not going to lay it.
They have the potential to. I mean, as long as, again, no distractions, focused, show up for 40 minutes, they can roll. They can maybe name their score if they do. So, like I say, I'm not gutsy enough to lay 20.5, but I certainly lean that way. All right, there we go. And we mentioned Georgia Tech earlier. Someone that asked about that, Nathan Cerna. Yeah, we talked about that game earlier. I do like Georgia Tech there, -4.5. I agree with you.
I'm on the under.
Yeah,
so.
And Connor Mack liking the under in that game as well. All right, we'll get to best bets in just a second. Hit the like button on the way out. We appreciate it. We'll get to best bets to wrap up the show in just a second, right after we hear from Manscaped and Southtown 101. Southtown 101, when you're in San Antonio, Texas, stop in. Great food, drinks, live music, DJs, karaoke, Southtown 101, and manscaped.com. Promo code PubSports, 20% off your purchase of anything at manscaped.com using promo code PubSports. All right, it is best bet time to wrap it up for this Tuesday edition of the College Basketball Net Profit Show. 2-0 sweep with best bets because Conor like Kent State. I like the over in UMass, Albany. Even my backup best bet, Troy, was a winner against San Diego State. It was a great night for a short card. We had a great night, Conor and I combined. Hopefully we can duplicate that tonight. C-Mac, let's go to you. What do you like for best bet?
Let's give out a few here. I have like 8 bets today. Shitload of bets for me. Sam Houston State +10. I got to take it. I think they hang in that ball game. And I already just gave it Georgia Tech under 131. And I've mentioned some of the other ones, so you guys should know.
All right, there we go. Multiple best bets here for Connor Mack on this Tuesday college basketball card. Like I say, much bigger than obviously we dealt with last night here on the show. My best bet for this card, I'm going to go to, let me just see, I'm definitely going to take one of these overs because I'm more heavy on the totals tonight. I like more totals than sides tonight when I peruse this card. And I'm going to go with it even though it's in the 160s because I remember I took FIU NC State over the total and the thing just flew over the total. We didn't even have to sweat it. It was that easy. And I find NC State, when they've got an inferior team athletically, they really crank up, the transition game even more in terms of pace. Yeah, I'm trying to go back to, it was 107-74, that game against Florida International. And it was totaled right around this, high 150s, low 160s as tonight's game with Coppin State. I like it to go up and over the total. 160.5. Over 160.5. Coppin State, NC State. Let's roll with that for best bet here for this Tuesday college basketball card.
And I'm on Coppin, +22. Yep. I think they can hang around there in that game.
Kevin Keats, Juan Dixon, these two coaches, all they do is they let both those teams get up and down the basketball court. You want pace, you're going to get it in that game. So Coppin and NC State over 160.5 for my best bet. That'll wrap up this edition of the College Basketball Net Profit Show. Thanks to everyone in the chat for joining us. Hit the like button on the way out. Oh, we got the big guy in the chat, or the boss, Jeff Slaughter, in the house. Shout out
Texas,
to him as well.
Georgia Tech, money line. Shout out. So real quick, everyone, get that from the boss.
I like that Virginia Tech team. Georgia Tech. I was going to say Virginia Tech's not playing tonight. Georgia Tech. That's what you meant. Yeah, I like Georgia Tech. I'm with you there. Good stuff. That's a wrap. We're back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern. Another edition of the College Basketball Net Profit Show. For Connor Mack, I'm Ian Cameron. Have a great Tuesday night. Enjoy the games and good luck. And we'll see you again tomorrow on Wednesday, same time, 5 p.m. Eastern, for another College Basketball Net Profit Show right here, Pub Sports Radio.